Oh, hello! Welcome back to another segment of me reviewing fan music submissions. Again, I was extraordinarily overwhelmed by the response. Very much so. So overwhelmed now that I absolutely despise my email inbox right now. So for future reference, send your submissions to becomethenight2, that's the number 2, at gmail.com. If you already sent submissions to me at the normal Become the Night email, don't worry about it. Those are already received. For any future submissions, again, Become the Night 2. That is the number 2. You guys submit your original music, studio quality, please, for me to listen to and give you my feedback. And that's about the gist of it. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow my band Crusade. We have links to our social media in the description of the video below. We have our first single coming out in October, so keep your eyes open for that. All right, let's hop into it. Touch Me in Paradise by Rusty Strings. First things first, change that band name. There is nothing acceptable about that band name. Typically, anything Rusty isn't really interesting. The sound of your band, which is kind of like mellowed out girl ballad rock, does not fit the name Rusty Strings at all. As a matter of fact, anytime I think of Rusty Strings, I think of something highly unpleasant. Just don't make that your name. Also, change the name of the song. Touch Me in Paradise just sounds gross. Touch me in my paradise, please. Oh yeah, right there, right on fucking paradise. It just feels like awkward, like it's somewhat sexual, and then also just, I don't know, it's a little cheesy. First thing I would note is that the tuning of the guitars, both with themselves and with each other, and also the intonation of the guitars is out. Make sure you take your acoustics to get a proper setup. The way that they mix the kick is actually fabulous. That is an awesome kick sound. The only issue is it feels very out of place with this composition. I think that could be mitigated if the velocity of the kick was just pulled back a little bit, which I mean, if these are actual live drums, which I'm sure they are, then you would have to re-record them. And then it's kind of weird because your snare sounds awful.
The wind gives round to you, that's been paradise.
I'm not sure if it was a recording thing or if it was a mixing thing. Based upon what I was hearing, I think it's a combination of both of them. I think you had the mic placement on the snare probably not in the best spot, and not only that, from what I could hear, it sounds like you only used a top snare mic. To really get a decent snare tone, you need at least 2 mics, one on top and one on bottom. The place that we're going to track our drums, there's going to be 4 microphones for the snare, 1 top, 1 bottom, 1 on the side, and then 1 kind of offset capturing all of the low stuff coming out of both the snare and all the toms, and actually catching some of the attack of the kick. There's this guitar fill at 125. It just feels a little too much like you're just running scales between the very conjunctive nature of the melody and the rhythm being very much focused on 8th notes. That and the articulation. The articulation feels like you're trying to play a very clean scale and not like you're singing me a melody with your guitar. Your singer has an absolutely great voice, but she is far over affecting her voice. The affect she's using is a very 90s, it's like, it feels a lot like a blend between Cranberries and Alanis Morissette.
I open my eyes and watch how you are. I really know where to find paradise.
That can definitely be cool, and I think it fits this style very well. I think there's just a little bit too much of it. It's a little over exaggerated. Like if I was going to make a joke song about a stereotypical 90s singer, that's the exact voice I would use, because it would be like perfect for a 90s parody. It's so affected, and also I know you are all from Bulgaria, so I'm sure English is not your first language. It's so affected that you can't even understand what the hell she's saying. It gets to the point where it actually becomes a little distracting and pulls you away from the song. If you tell her to loosen up a little bit more with the affect and sing just a little bit more naturally instead of trying to force it, I think you're gonna have a lot better results. Also, this is definitely not my kind of song. The composition was okay, I would say. One thing that's gonna help you out with your composition is putting more musical dynamic between your verses and choruses. Something as simple as adding a string pad or even just adding another layer of guitars can accomplish this. Or whatever's happening with the guitars in the verses, dynamically pull them back a little bit, so then when you go to the chorus normally, there is that dynamic shift upward. Next, in classical Latin pronunciation, in via veritatem. Veritatem is how you would say that. By Without Fate. No, I am not listening to your 18-minute song. If you send me a song that's effing long, I'm not gonna listen to the whole thing. Not sorry. These drums sound incredibly fake. Also, I feel like the drums in the intro are written a little awkwardly. Like, it doesn't feel like a drummer wrote those drums. The guitar and really all the instruments in general feel a little bit too scooped. Push the mids on your guitar more, push the signal going into the front of your amp more, definitely. I'd roll back the gain on your distortion, or whatever distortions you're using, and then a little bit of the gain on your amp as well. Especially if it's a tube amp, let the tubes do the work for you. It will have a more satisfying punch and it'll cut through better. The low end is very dominant in your mix, coming from the kick and the low end of the bass. I can't really hear the high end of the bass much at all. The singer is really not my style at all. It sounds like Dave Mustaine if he did power metal. Which the guy sounds like he's talented. It sounded like everything he was trying to do he accomplished. It's just really not my taste. The songwriting's okay. Power metal's not my thing. I've heard a lot worse power metal out there, and that's from people who actually tour. Weight of the Ring by, I have no idea who this band is because the guy didn't tell me. Overall, this song is good. The composition is okay, but there wasn't really anything unique that stood out to me of like, oh, that's cool. It was more like, oh, I've heard this metalcore stuff before. Interesting that you all paired this together in this way, I guess. Like, there was nothing for me to really distinguish this band between any other metalcore band. The execution on everything was good. If I really had to pick anything apart, I would say that the kick is a little thin, and really all of the drum mix was a little bit pushing the highs and the high mids to get that clack out of it, but the lows, which I'm sure are in the recording somewhere, did not poke through well. Like, really, altogether, it was a good effort, and I think you guys executed pretty dang well, and the mix, other than the thinness of the drums, was actually pretty dang good. Just compositionally, like, we've been here before. What else you got? Alpha by FJMG. This is actually a really cool composition. Guy has a great rhythm tone. The lead could definitely be louder in the mix, without a doubt. And not only that, the tone that you use for your lead sounds like it's the same tone you're using for your rhythm. You want something a little bit more saturated with your lead tone to really get that nice, clean punch and sustain. Also, on the slower lead lines, I appreciate what you're doing phrasing-wise. I think to really sell them better, you want to work on your articulation a little bit. The kick is definitely too high in the mix, and that's even compared to the rest of the drum kit. It has an overbearing low end, which I'm sure you really wanted to get that punch. Trust me, I get that. Part of that punch comes from your bass, actually, which was completely overwhelmed by that kick. If you let more low end of the bass, because I could hear the mid-range in the bass quite clearly, if you let more of that low end in the bass come through, it's going to give your riffs more gravity and more fullness. And you will get that bass smack when the low end of the bass and the low end of the kick marry each other into a whack. I think if you keep developing your writing, because I mean, I think the writing is pretty cool and interesting. I think it could have been developed a little bit more. But if you keep working on your writing, I think you could do something with this. All right, guys, that is it for today. Thank you all again for your submissions. Again, I'm very humbled that you guys value my opinion that much. Or is it possibly the exposure on the channel? I'm sure it's a little mix of both. If you like this video, if you like what I do on this channel, please support me on Subscribestar. That is the only way I can keep making badass videos for you. Again, follow my band Crusade. Single is going to be coming out October 10th. Links to our social media in the description. Please like and share and comment on this video. That helps out the channel a lot. And you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Become the Night. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next video. Rock on!